Well, thank God we meet again. Here we are. It's Wednesday now, and it's the morning again. So, here we are. Here we are. Notice I got my African shirt on today because I realize things are starting to come together a little bit here. And what I mean by that is that I look back at over some of the things that I've said, and I'm sure some of it is just boring as fuck because I'm talking about my own healing journey. And yet, it was important for me to literally weed out all that old stuff that it was inside. You know what I mean? So I suppose, in a way, this is a bit of a garden I'm making here. And I have actually spent a number of hours now carefully digging up all this old growth and weeds and nonsense and just getting to the earth, getting that earth watered, getting it open to the air, turning it over. Why? Because this is what we do when we begin cultivating a living organic thing. It's what we do. So now I've got my African shirt on. And why do I got my African shirt on? Because I realized that this medium, this internet medium that we're in, is all about presentation. So all it is presentation. This beautiful evolutionary gift of this internet that we have is communication only. It's a surface. All it is a surface. All it is a conduit of communication. Certainly, everything people have ever known in an information sense is in the internet. And that's a part of communication. How many times have I been... Now, hold on. Let me take a step back here. As a 20th century man, like I can remember a time when when all of our houses had like a set of encyclopedias and dictionaries. This was like a part of the family bookcase that was like, a 10, 20, 30 volume set of useful facts, the encyclopedia. And that was a 20th century phenomenon that now, of course, doesn't exist because the internet contains everything and almost infinitely more than any encyclopedia set ever could. This is why this tool is informational. It is communicative and it is evolutionary. It's just a miracle. And yet look at what it is. It's not being treated as a connection point between people in the world that they're living in. It's being treated as a world unto itself. And it's becoming a self-absorbing abstraction because it's nothing but a surface. It's nothing but a cultivated image. And I'm aware of that, So I think that honestly, we need to come to grips with what the internet is, use it properly, and return to living our lives and use this beautiful tool of evolutionary power for what it is, communication and information. And so, for example, whereas, in conversations in the 20th century, if you came to a point where someone, you didn't know anything, you have to put a pin in that topic, go and like research, and if it wasn't in the encyclopedia, you'd go to the library or you'd talk to someone who might know, go to the university or something, right? Now, you just check that fact out online and you know it instantly. It is. This is evolution happening. And yet, facts aren't knowing. Facts aren't living. Facts are not realization. Facts are not any kind of living process. It's something that is a part of something that we're doing as living beings. And this communication medium, in my view, is like some kind of nervous system for the whole world. If you think about COVID, that virus, that was the first time ever in the history of the world that like everyone on earth knew the same word, right? We all went through the same experience. Plagues have happened before, always localized because connectivity was always very local and very regional. But now connection is global, it's complete. And not only do we all share the same essential experience, but we can also communicate instantly about it around the globe. This is amazing to me. It is amazing because it's evolutionary. It's never been seen before. We don't know what it is. We don't know what we're doing with it. And so, the internet, here I am on the internet and I'm doing my best to just join this thing. I'm acknowledging my position as an end user in this evolutionary process. And despite its legion of I don't know what to call them, dark features, the way it inculcates ignorance and influence by underhanded corporate, governmental, tyrannical powers, whatever we want to call those. I mean, it's got the very best of humanity and the very worst of humanity in it, and so the thing is that it's breeding a kind of passivity, which is worrisome, because at the end of the day, we are all end users. We are all like connection points inside this complex network of connection and communication. And we should treat it as such. We're communicating. What are we communicating about? It isn't the medium that is the thing. We shouldn't get lost in the internet and just lose hours upon hours and days upon days just fixing and stewing on nothing more than a cultivated appearance. We need to get back to like our lives out here in the real world and use this medium for what it is. We got to get perspective on this medium. This is my opinion, but such as it is. And I've got my African shirt on today though, because I'm acknowledging that this is about appearances. And I know that, when summertime comes and I'm out playing music and with my friends, I love to be wearing my African shirts. Why? Because I love African style. I've always loved African style. I love African music. I've been to Africa, and it was a transformative experience for me. Even though, as I've said to you many times in my healing journey part of this, that like any transformation occurred only within the crippling conditioning that I've been subjected to. But anyway, I'm wearing this to be bringing my style now. And I'm starting to say things that I think are really serious, because I have dug up the garden, I have opened the earth, and I'm ready to cultivate now. And how I launched this new phase is by starting to talk about community the other day. And then community led me to a very strange post yesterday where I wanted to talk about some Carlos Castaneda ideas that have helped me out. Assemblage point, tonal and nawal, these esoteric metaphysical concepts, physical and metaphysical concepts, which have helped me in my long process of realization. And now here I am before you, and I feel that, first of all, if anyone knows or they've experienced these Carlos Castaneda techniques, and you somehow, in the miracle of this bizarre evolutionary communication form, ever hear these words, please tell me your experience about this Carlos Castaneda experience. You know what I mean? Tell me how it's affected your life, because I'm interested in that. I'm sitting here on my own. I can only riff in particular directions because I'm just, I'm giving you what is organically part of what seems to me I want to say in this moment here. And yet I know that the secret of transformation is what happens when we begin kindling together. That's what happens in music. Music comes out of me. I play music on my own. But when I begin to play with others, that is to say, I begin to create and get involved in community, things are enhanced exponentially and unpredictably. And that is a beautiful thing. And so this is, again, talk about community, talking about cultivation now. It's what I'm trying to do here. And so, I had to put on the table a bunch of my Carlos Castaneda concepts, because I guess the thing I've been thinking about since I brought up community is visualization, and something that's very close to our power of visualization, and that is insight. Insight. Coming from mental health and addictions work, how far you can help someone is how much insight you can help them have into what's going on in their lives. And people's insight can be impaired. It can be partial. People can get little glimpses of the truth, and in those glimpses, you can help them come along in a certain way. But very few people have good, intact insight. Very few. And I don't mean that just in terms of people in the mental health and addiction system. I mean in society at large. We stigmatize people with mental illness. We stigmatize people with addiction. And I think that's an easy way for all the rest of the people lacking insight, people who are pre-contemplative in our society. It's a way for them to continue in their ignorance, because they're like, well, we got those mentally ill people over here. I'm not that, paying my bills, blah, 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 doing my thing, and thereby the status quo of ignorance, which feeds the corporate masters of this collapsing society that's the byproduct of imperial European conquest and domination of the world. That's what happens, And the epidemic of mental illness and addiction is just growing every day. And the solutions of medicating people and prescribing pharmaceutical medications are just another part of the sickness, because we've now commodified the solution to mental illness. It's never look within. It's never develop yourself. It's never change your vision of the life you're living. It's never increase your insight into what is bothering you. It's always suppress the effects. Just suppress the effects. Everything's going to be all right, and it's never going to be all right. And in fact, eventually, those medicative medicinal therapies are eventually going to lose their potency, because your body builds up its resistances and you need more and more and more. I mean, it's a Band-Aid. It's not a solution, I think, if you want to use the metaphor, that the epidemic of mental illness and addictions in our culture is a kind of festering wound that's in us culturally, and we can't really address those cultural wounds unless we go inside and address our own wounds. This is, again, folding back into why I feel that this learning process that I've been on with you has been important, because I have first gone through my own healing journey here to say, before I can really say anything, before I can cultivate anything for real inside myself, I got to dig down into the soil, the loam of my deep places inside, where there is no body and there are no thoughts, and be there in stillness, be there in silence, and all the little hooks and jags and edges and painful little spots, all the abrasions and rough hurt spots inside that I feel, I have got to myself do the healing inside. It's an active process that only I can do. And I think that is what we all must collectively do. We can help each other out. There are ways and means for us to help each other out, but in the end of the day, it's all about what we do inside ourselves, for ourselves. And that is the first step. And honestly, again, I keep circling because I'm talking about community. And now I've introduced, I think, the basis of community has got to be visualization and insight. And so I think that's why yesterday I got into the abstraction of Carlos Castaneda's picture of energy, because as I get on the internet, and I look at other people who are like exploring these concepts, right? Most of what I see is people trying to enhance their capacity to visualize, energy body, who are visualizing the assemblage point or the energy plat or whatever I mentioned about it, And I'm not trying to denigrate these things, because these are visualizations. These are visualizations. You visualize something, and if you visualize something that's outside of the normal pattern, it creates an opening through which you can gain insight into the reality of formless flow state, loving energy being, which is no form. And if you go to any enlightened system of knowledge, that is the essence of what you're trying to achieve, is formless flow state, energy being. You connect with the unknowable and you just dissolve, and you're still here, you're still somewhere, but you're nowhere. And you're in flow state. And once that happens, you stop reacting, you stop being a conditioned response, and you begin being an authentic flow of creative energy. And in that state, then you can visualize. You can visualize at that point. And that's vital, because right now, most communities seem to be involved by what they're not. Like there's so much offense and so much friction, between people, and we only focus on the differences and the dissonances. I mean, I do the same thing myself, right? But that's why I try not to, react negatively to things here, because I don't want to get in just this dance of dissonance. When I in my life interact with people who are controlled by their conditioned response, and I call them the dark puppets. The dark puppets of intergenerational trauma, the dark puppets of negative conditioning. Like, I mean, I'm using the poetic terms of my visualization to describe the people who are trauma influenced and damaged and hurt and not able to be authentic and not able to have insight into their process, therefore constantly trapped and constantly repeating the historic mistakes again and again and again. And it's the same individually as it is outside. So when I talk about community, it's like if community just comes down to an endless repetition of the things that we don't like or the things that are wrong, it's not anything. It's got to be based on visualization. And again, I'm circling around it again and again. That's why I talked about those Carlos Castaneda concepts, because they're concepts which in the end, although I couldn't break out myself, I needed spirit to help me. I couldn't do it alone. There's nothing that we can do on our own. We need to tap the spiritual dimension, which is no dimension. It's like nothingness. It's flow state. It's being that is unattached to anything that we may conceive, think, feel, perceive in any way. I mean, we're always perceiving, but when we are in flow state, it's unhinged and unhooked from any historic process. And by history, I'm talking about conditioned response, of course, right? So the insight that you gain inside of yourself opens the possibility for you to be able to visualize your life in some way, whatever way you want, right? And no one is doing that, like what we're doing is trying to create false appearances. That's what I see so much of this internet being about. I walk around out there, as I'm wandering around in the park or by the ocean or something. Some people are just sitting there like videoing things and taking pictures of things. It's wonderful to be able to create these albums on our whatever platform you're posting them on, right? But I wonder, because it seems a lot of the time that people are just walking behind their phones. They're looking at life as, well, how is this going to be rendered on my Facebook account or whatever? You know what I mean? And that's an inversion. That's the problem. We're looking at this conduit, this technology, this evolutionary communication channel. We're looking at it as a thing unto itself, like, well, this is the whole thing that matters now, when really what it should be doing is enhancing our lives out here, and it's not. It's drawing us away from lives out here, and I feel really, really a sad and concerned feeling for children these days, because here are these children who are in the finest bright time of like joy, experience in the world, playing, being outside, being with each other, being in nature, and most of the time is being spent online, just stewing in an idea place that's nothing. And the thing that worries me is what's going to happen. And by the way, like even in the process of it, rates of mental illness and addiction and suicide and all kinds of dysfunction are just astronomically on the rise, simply because of the experience of it that no one is really addressing or caring to understand. But I wonder what will happen 10 or 15 years down the line when these unfortunate children grow up to be, in their 30s, say, and they realize that they haven't lived. They don't know themselves. They don't know the world. They can't do anything. They can't do anything with themselves. Like, what's going to happen when that disconnection from the world around them is almost too real? I feel for them, because, I'm just kind of some kind of like wacky lunatic because, I wasted 47 years of my life in my inauthenticity, and I can only be thankful that I wasn't I wasn't raised as a child in this internet medium, because I'd have never escaped. I would have been lost in it forever, and who knows what horrors I would have been trapped in. It was I shudder to think about it. I shudder, and so I look at these children today and I think, what is going to become of them? And of course, then you look at our collapsing society, and the fact that it's just this barely coherent mass of friction and dissonance and predatory capitalist enterprise where everything is commodified and our environment's being degraded and no one gives a fuck. It's very frightening. And so my only answer to all of this horror that we're living in right now, is what I'm offering to you. Well, what is community? What am I trying to create here? And that is insight first and foremost. Cultivate that insight, right? But by insight, I'm really just referring to the process that, if you care to, you can go back and look at my journey to this point, the journey of healing. Loving is the state which opens energy being, which opens flow state, which is inclusive, because when you're in a state of love, when you're in love with yourself and you're in love with the world around you, everyone is your friend, and you could say, well, that's going to lead you to trouble because lots of people are looking to take advantage of you. Never be afraid of loving, because if you are authentic in your loving presence, no one's going to fool you, because because you can feel it, because your energy recognizes their lack of energy. This is something where people, if you say, oh, love, you talk about love, people say, well, I don't want to be taken advantage of. You're going to get taken advantage of. It's like the only time you're taken advantage of is when you're stuck in your conditioning. That's the only time. You're susceptible. That's when you're vulnerable. In fact, I would say that, in mental health and addiction, one of the features is that people who are stuck in that trauma-based conditioned response, is that they're vulnerable. They don't see things clearly. And they're also, no coincidence, detached from being in love with themselves and the world. Being in love with the world means that your insight, is intact. And when your insight is intact, you don't get fooled, because you're a fool. You hear these gurus and these teachers say these things, but it is true. Be in love with the world. Be friends with everyone. And very, very quickly, you can easily identify people's behavior and what they're up to. Why? Because you recognize, well, it doesn't feel loving to me. Well, what's happening, brother or sister, whatever the case may be. And then you see them for what they are, And at that point, it's like you can take care of yourself, because being loving doesn't mean just being an idiot and ignorant and stupid and submitting yourself to abuse or whatever it might be, Insight means you choose your engagement. Insight means you can visualize your own loving presence. You can visualize other people clearly, and you know who are the ones making an effort and the ones who are out there pulling a fast one or whatever they might be up to, And in my life, all of my mistakes came because I was pretending that things were all right. Oh no, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me. And therefore hiding the fact that I was dislocated and disconnected from my inner being. And that was the whole show right there, And so that's why in this journey that I'm taking with you here, like the healing journey had to come first. The clearing out of that garden had to come first. The turning of the earth had to happen. Before cultivation can begin, you got to, clear it out. Clear it out. It's a process, and I'm using it as a metaphor, of course, because what am I talking about here? Insight, loving energy being, coming to flow state, and then realizing that your visualization of your own life and of the world is a byproduct of flow state. So with Carlos Castaneda, he says, everything that we think of as factual is just a description. Everything evolutionary, even what I'm talking about, this internet, all this evolutionary process is just one layer of possible reality that we're tapped into. And so by realizing your energy being, which is to say you visualize it, seeing is his phrase, which is a kind of total energy perceptive unit, right? When you begin visualizing your energy being and your assemblage point, that visualization, which is energy and flow state and nothingness, stillness and silence, can give rise to any infinitude of possible descriptive worlds. That's why I feel it's important to at least consider it, you know? And as I said at the beginning of all this, that's what I love about Joe Rogan is spirit of inquiry. That guy's out there genuinely asking questions and creating a spirit of open inquiry, you know? And if you look at the people who are the shallow and pathetic ones, you know, like you don't need to agree or disagree, right? But when you say, you shouldn't ask that question, there's certain things you can't ask a question about. No, that's a mistake. And unfortunately, so much of our society is that way now. Now we're getting laws of censorship, hate speech laws. It's like, ooh, that's frightening. I'm not a hater, but the restriction of free speech in the name of limiting hatred is frightening, because that is the essence of democracy. And just censoring people isn't the answer, because then any group can claim another group is just hate. And then it's going to be court cases, and who's going to decide? Then it comes down to government regulation. And before you know it, we've walked into a tyranny. And we're pretty much there already. And tyranny is the final stage of social collapse. You know, I mean, it depends what system you look at. But again, look at history. I realize I say you look at history, people are going to say, well, what history, right? Now there's like a flat earth society, which is to say, you know, fuck history. History is whatever I want it to be, you know? And here is sort of a paradoxical full circle. I am saying that all factual history is a kind of inventory of description which we come to out of flow state, right? But the thing is, most people who speak about, you know, flat earth, or, you know, people get offended by shallow interpretations of things instead of, you know, genuinely engaging. I think that shows a definite lack of insight in our society, a definite lack of inner being, a definite lack of loving energy and any kind of responsibility that people are taking for their living moments. And it's cultivated by this shallow surface of the internet, you know, beautiful evolutionary tool turned into an addictive nothing, you know. And in a way, look at any tool that's available to us, you know, like look at all the psychoactive substances, you know what I mean? I said in a previous talk that psychedelics are a tool to help people begin healing themselves. When they're too stuck, the psychedelic just breaks apart the things that seem so certain, and it allows a moment of artificially induced change to show the individual that change is real. They're a useful tool, right? But then you look in society, and we've got a very negative stigma on every kind of substance use because they're being used in the improper way. They're being used to escape reality rather than to cultivate reality. And so we've got this stigmatized opinion of substances, and it's written in our legal codes. And so any attempt on someone who wants to establish themselves and grow and expand and heal and learn, right? You can't, because the law is in the way if you want to go in that direction. Equally, for people who are trapped in addictions and trapped in mental illness, which usually has got addiction along with it, we got to change the law in order to somehow have more facility to help these people. And in harm reduction, get any kind of substance use out of the criminal element so that people aren't dying from toxic drugs, and use the taxable money from that process to, you know, improve social structures of support. And I mean, that's an idealism, that's a visualization that lots of people are talking about, right? And I happen to agree with it. I'm not saying it's an answer or the only answer. I'm just saying that it's something we should consider realistically. But how can we consider it when people got 1,000 obtuse and closed-minded views based on no experience and no inner insight? We're caught in this vicious circle of people sitting inside their conditioned response and their automatic thinking and their schemas and their unthinking ways, you know? And so here I am trying to advocate for community, and I come to these abstract concepts like insight, visualization, you know, and I've invoked cultivation, right? Cultivation, because my offering when it comes to a concept, and I'm very careful with ideation because ideas are the most dangerous thing that we have in our world today. Our world is full of ideas. And the moment you got an idea, it can be used in any way that someone's intends it, you know? In the 20th century, to be on the left side of, you know, to be a liberal meant that you were into social change and you were into self-awareness and insight, right? Now, the left has become a new kind of petty tyranny. You know, it's about censorship. It's about indoctrination to certain accepted realities. It's become its own kind of tyranny. So now you've got the right wing, which is traditional tyranny, you know, violence, ignorance, the way it's always been. And then you've got left-wing tyranny, which is censorship of them and only this prescribed set of acceptable words, phrases, and behaviors. And it's like, there's no place to go. Where do you go? Right and left are both extremes now I don't find that either of them are conducive to community at all. And where do we go? This is our society. Well, there is no place to go except within. Start there and then become a flow of loving energy to the people around you. And then that's that. And that's what I'm saying today, you know? So what's my idea? My idea is something that I began thinking about during when I was working in healthcare, but I realized that as an idea, it doesn't really fit there. My idea is basically a kind of group, a community. I call it the Dream Farm. And so if you've been listening to me along the way here, you know, loving, healing, evolving, dreaming, right? Loving, healing, evolving is a process that fits us into this descriptive world of bodies and evolution and the cosmos and the galaxy and all the things of society, you know, collapse, history, you name it. All of that is a learning, healing, evolving, loving process, you know, being involved in it. Coming from true energy being, I would say that loving, healing, dreaming is the process, because dreaming is what life is about. What is dreaming? Dreaming is a kind of visualization. Dreaming is what happens when we're in a different world from the world of facts and description that we accept as unchangeable. And I mean, despite my concern about censorship and tyranny coming from the left, I've got no problem at all with the fluidity of gender, with the concern that they have about ignorance, because ignorance is a real problem. But you can't fight ignorance with ignorance. You know, you just can't do it, you know? And to talk about the things that are in the center of our culture as it goes forward, you know, gender fluidity is something that we need to learn more about. And not just people who have a fluid gender identity, but also people who have more traditional gender identities. We should be talking about it more, talking about, you know, the things that give rise to the way we live. It should therefore be a philosophical inquiry rather than just a censorship and a lack of communication. Like, we got to talk about it, we got to understand it, because this is what's happening as we're going forward. You know, people who are able to access a different gender identity is to say, I feel anyway, this is what my insight is telling me. These are people who are having a sense that they're not their bodies, that they're some kind of flow state there, and that they're identifying in new ways. And that's a good thing. or it's at least not a bad thing. It's just a new thing. It's just a new way, and it's a new way which is helpful because it opens us. For people to be different means that the old way doesn't hold together. And that's where we run into the old style tyranny, where you get conservative people who are like, no, wrong, violence, right? And there's a real backlash from the right, and it's just ignorance and closed-mindedness. I mean, and in its extreme, like Trumpism and like the flat earthers, the idea that kind of process is going to lead to anything other than tyranny and pain is just madness, and it's madness. And on the other hand, you can't just censor people and then hope that well, no, it's gonna work out because we're just going to indoctrinate people, and our education system is not about learning now, it's about indoctrinating you into the proper kind of language, and then we'll just hope that it all works out. It's like that also is just a recipe for destruction, And who am I to say? I'm just some lunatic on the internet. I'm just another talking head in my African shirt here on a Wednesday morning talking about community. I'm talking about the dream farm. That's an idea I have because we got to be cultivating our dreams. We got to be cultivating our dreams. This life is a dream, and it's going to end on a day that you don't know. Like when death comes to you, you're not going to know that day. And maybe when you go through all the process of going inside, healing your wounds, feeling love, feeling flow state, maybe then you get awareness of death. Maybe you'll begin to realize the day it might come. Maybe that's a byproduct of that kind of insight. And yet I think that it's actually more healthy to just recognize you don't know when that day is going to come, and that uncertainty is nothing to be afraid of. That uncertainty is actually the key which unlocks true living in this living moment. And at that point, community, I offer to you an idea of the dream farm, which is to say we got to cultivate our dreams. And when I began this concept, I've always been drawn to hunter-gathering as a kind of positive human way, where it's just take what you need, live in harmony with nature, right? And yet, if I really ponder our consciousness and our energy, we have become cultivators. We're cultivators, and we've gone beyond just hunter-gathering. I mean, hunter-gathering is in our modern context. I mean, it's got. You could argue that in the principle of living in harmony with nature, it's a positive thing, and yet. We've come so far, we can't just abandon civilization. Civilization is what we're doing. But what is civilization? It's been co-opted by the greedy few and by some kind of endlessly inexhaustible hunger that's abstracted into money that can never have enough. And it's just this appalling and hellish, frankly, ideology, and it's just consuming the world. It's consuming people, and it does nothing but create ruin, and ruin is what we're heading for, and collapse. It's like it seems no one cares to stop it. So who knows what the future is going to hold? I mean, that's the dire and depressing reality. But I mean, I suppose I should say something about it. So what struck me. One of Gabor Mate's books is called "In the Realm of the Hungry Ghosts," and he uses that Buddhist I don't know what to call it. It's like they consider it a state of reality, the hungry ghosts, right? Which is to say, ghosts that just wander the earth, driven by their hunger, and that this represents a devolution in someone's psyche. And he found that to be on the streets of the Lower East Side of Vancouver, because when you're dealing with the culture of addiction, you're dealing with someone whose pain has so disconnected them that all that's left in them is the hunger for something outside that's going to help them feel better on the inside. And that's the essence of addiction. It is this kind of devolution of the individual into the realm of the hungry ghosts. But the thing is it's very easy for our society to stigmatize the Lower East Side of Vancouver, or, the Pandora Avenue area of Victoria, which is our own little mini ghetto here, without realizing that, like, our whole society right now is the realm of the hungry ghosts. And speaking within that metaphor, I would say most of society, I don't think it's any coincidence that we have a entertainment fascination with zombies and vampires. Look at Anne Rice. Vampires are romanticized now. Oh, so sensual, so sexy. I want a revisiting of what vampirism means. I don't think that's sexy. I don't think that's beautiful. I think that the beauty that a vampire projects is just to suck you in so it can eat you, so it can consume you. In other words, it's a shallow and unreal facade that the vampire exudes in order to fool you so that it can suck the life out of you and drain you. And so I don't think it's much of a stretch to look at the 1%, to look at the world of corporations, to look at the world of politics as a world which is the world of vampires. Equally, their servants are the zombies. What's a zombie? A zombie is a mindless creature that's pursuing its hunger, but it lacks intelligence. It just wanders around with a blunted physical violence, trying to consume whatever it finds. And the original zombie movies had that metaphoric idea in there that this is the worst type of social phenomenon. That's why I can't remember, because there's so many of them. I can't remember. It was one of the original ones. It was the people who were fighting against the zombies and trying to escape. It was in a shopping mall, and that was, symbolically chilling, because the shopping malls where the zombies wander, really, and they vaguely have these memories of who they are, but really they've just become these shambling creatures of a dulled, blunted hunger. You know what I mean? And look at our world. People have been reduced to zombies. And the people who know more what they're doing, they're the vampires. And they're the people that we've got to be careful of. I'm speaking in a metaphor, of course, but it's a metaphor that's common in reggae music, which is another form that I love, because that is spiritual music, and they see culture for what it is, and they talk about the vampires, and I've met the vampires as well. And when I was stuck in my conditioning, I put my toe into that world, and it caused me terrible, terrible pain. And when I was finally broken free from it, thank you to the Spirit for setting me free. When that happened, I became aware of all the pain that was inside of me. And it wasn't just the traumas that I'd experienced and all the hurt places that I couldn't acknowledge. It had become physical pain because of the actions that I had taken that were only reactions based in my trauma response and my conditioning, but had become behaviors in their own right, in the way that I was creating my life in that pattern. That's how we become enslaved. That's how, what was I? Was I at risk of becoming a vampire or a zombie? Yeah, definitely. And it was pain, thankfully. It was being true to my pain that allowed me to be here in front of you and to just be someone in pain, rather than one of the pretenders who is caught in that cycle of seeking what the vampires are vending to us. And that's pretty scary, So here I am talking about community, and then I always end up inevitably talking about, like it's impossible to talk positively without at least addressing the context which makes me think that we need community. I know I need it, and everyone I know needs it, And in the end of the day, what, again, I sing about it a lot, is I find that what I need is inevitably something that I've got to give. That's what happens for me. Like when I really get still and quiet and I think about the things that I need, I realize there is a space there for me to be in a giving process. And in the giving, in the creating, in the visualizing, which arises out of the insight of flow state, loving energy being, I come to things like the dream farm. Let's cultivate dreams. I'm creating this so that you will talk to me. Let's cultivate dreams. If you're not cultivating your dreams, or if you realize you're living in a nightmare, well, let's start talking about that. Let's start examining what's going on. In other words, if you're not in love with the life you're living, let's begin healing the reasons why you're not. And ultimately, that's going to lead to dream farming. Let's all be dream farmers together. That's the community that I want to create. Let us all be dream farmers. As an idea, I think it's open-ended. It's just open inquiry. It's learning. What is it to be a dream farmer? You're learning. When you're learning, you're not stuck in your ideas or your thinking or your broken trauma-based conditioning. You're not stuck in any ignorance. You're open. You're in flow state. You're capable of engaging authentically. You're capable of visualizing your own life. Let's be dream farmers together. Let's do it. I know I'm doing it. And later today, I'm going to be down at the gazebo playing some music, dream farming with my friends and anyone who happens to come by. Here is an effort I'm making to bring this idea to you out there on the internet and say that you've got to unhook from this shallowness. You got to unhook from this vampirism that's got its mosquito sucking needle inside of you, sucking your vitality out by making you think that the solution to your problems is more things being vended to you for money, or that makes you think that you've got to continue. Just continue. Just keep go. I'll be happy tomorrow. You're never going to be happy tomorrow. The moment you think your happiness is tomorrow, you're already stuck thinking you can't be happy now because of things that happened in the past. And you've already lost the whole game right there. The only happiness you're ever going to know, the only joy you're ever going to know is right here. The only heaven that you're ever going to know is right here and now. So if you're not in heaven right now, you must be in hell. But don't let them decide that for you. Don't let any religious system tell you that you're in hell. That's your choice. Don't let them make up your mind. You choose. I am choosing to be loving. I am choosing to be a loving, healing, evolving, dreaming thing. I'm an energy being. And I say that to you because it's true for me. And the one idea that I want to share as what the community I want to create is, let us be dream farmers together. Let us create a dream farm out of this world that we're in and cultivate our dreams and help each other cultivate the dreams that we want to live. I realize that when saying that, there's a negative response. Well, if we're going to sit around living with our dreams and the society's going to fall apart and no one's going to do any work, I think that is a shallow and empty and hollow nothingness being vended by some zombie personality, right? Because in the end of the day, when you come to loving inside, that's the true creation. That's where your life is a full and joyous experience. And your part in it is something that you are creating because you've got insight. You're not a slave anymore. You're not a dark puppet of that conditioning. You're not a dark puppet of the conditioning that, the vampire masters of this collapsing society tell you. At that point, gain some insight. Take hold of your capacity to visualize and cultivate your dreams. So, community. Let us live in a dream farm together, and let us be dream farmers together. Let's cultivate our dreams. And on that note, I shall bid you a good day. Be well. Find stillness inside. Find it. And then keep reaching. Until next time.